So, I have asked my very good friend Lori Stanley to join me today to do a book review of Innovation for Social Change, a book by Leah Kral. Lori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Jay, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm Lori Stanley, and I am the founder and CEO of the ever uniquely named Lori Stanley Nonprofit Consulting. I'm here in Ontario, Canada, and I empower nonprofits to focus on the right things at the right time to elevate their social impact and sustainability.
I wish my pitch was that clean. I love it. That's
It's
beautiful.
taken some work. That's not the first iteration of it.
It works for me. I love it. So, we're both in the same kind of space, entrepreneurial wise. Whereas I focus on digital transformation, you focus on basically the whole organization and helping nonprofits improve. We both serve nonprofits, and that's why I don't even remember exactly how we got connected recently on LinkedIn. But we started talking about this book, and you have already been connected with the author Leah Kral through some other activities on LinkedIn. So thought it might be I didn't see a whole lot of reviews on books. I read a ton of nonfiction business books, but being that recently pivoted to serving nonprofits specifically and social impact organizations, this one really caught my eye. And I thought it'd be really cool for us to kind of break ground and do a book review on it and put it out into the internet sphere and let people check it out.
Yes, and when I met Leah, I actually had no idea about her book. And so, I mean, it's just funny how things happen, right? Because I met her, we had a bit of a conversation. She mentioned the book. I think I put it in my Amazon cart. Maybe would have or wouldn't have at some point picked up on it. And then you and I talked. And then that's when I'm like, yep, let's do this. And what a good read. What a good read.
Yeah, so I guess we can jump right into it. There's actually quite a few themes to cover. Um, Initial reaction, though.
Initial reaction is that, she's called it social innovation for social change. And as someone who does a lot of work supporting nonprofits around strategy, around clarity, around focus, organizational reviews, and even helping nonprofits get started, to me, this is an awesome book on how to lead, how to operate, and how to grow your nonprofit organization. And what I love about it is it's brought a lot of different concepts in where, you might have a book on your competitive edge, you might have a book on innovation. She's brought a number of concepts together in this book, and it's a combination of the theory, but what I love is she gives you the tactical component as well. So you walk away with some very easy to implement tools that, in my estimation, are very beneficial to any nonprofit, regardless of what stage of development they're at. New, around for years, looking to scale, looking to grow. And I like that it's based on economics and best practice.
I mean, book review done. Like, I don't even need all of these note cards and these little tabs and whatnot. I will say, as somebody who's consumed a ton, and I come from the startup world back in the day, and I've been an app developer for a while. So entrepreneurship, startup, all that stuff is very meaningful. I've read every book there is, and when I first jumped into this book, it really gave me okay, this is kind of like lean startup for nonprofits. But I'll say one of the things that impressed me tremendously about this book was all of the tropes and all of the kind of practices and tricks and hacks that we in the entrepreneurial side of things, all of these themes are very, very well known to us. She not only introduces, and I wrote them, I'm going to rip through them here in a second. She introduces every one of them. She also ties them to practical applications and explains them in a way that they're very accessible. And for a book that was only 200 and some pages, it's not very big. It's packed. And before we get too much into it, I'm going to go through these tropes real quick. So she's got the 5 whys of Six Sigma. She's got utopian visioning, asset mapping, USP, co-opetition, open source, infinite game or non-zero sum, red teaming, shout out to my cybersecurity nerds, SWOT analysis, stoicism, Turing tests, both practical and philosophical, creative destruction, value props, small experiments, workshopping, storytelling versus data, collaboration, 360 reviews, and pre-mortems. And I'm sure I didn't get every single thing. But for those of us who consume a lot of entrepreneurial and a lot of business content, like every one of these tropes is almost their own book. So I was just amazed at a book of, I think it was 230 or some pages. Every one of these is given. It's not just thrown out there as, oh, here's another term. It's actually applied to some of the stories.
I think we're observing the same thing. That's exactly what I'm saying in terms of how comprehensive it is. And I'm a big fan of that business lens. And I know it's a debatable issue in the nonprofit sector, but to bring that business lens in. And she's done that. Like the concept of competitive advantage, which, sometimes I love it, but sometimes I sense that nonprofits think of it as a dirty word, competitive. Mm-hmm. But the reality is you do live in a competitive landscape, a competitive context. You're competing for board members. The obvious is the funding, but you're competing for volunteers. And the concept of competitive edge is not about how do you take everybody down and out. It's really about how do you stand out. And it doesn't have to be in a harsh competitive way. And it's one of the things that I often see with nonprofits is they're really great about shouting out about the programs and services that they offer, but they're humble. And so they're not necessarily as great in talking about what it is that's different or unique about them and what their value add is. So, I love that she brought that concept in particular, and some other business concepts. I mean, the concept of being innovative in and of itself, sure. And the idea of experimenting and piloting and trying and learning from that. Too often I see it's got a whole section in there on scaling. And I've seen where nonprofits find they've had great success in one program and decide that they're going to scale it, replicate it, but don't necessarily put a process in place to test that. And just because it worked with one community or one population in one region doesn't mean it's going to work somewhere else. So she's got some really great insights and tools and resources on how you scale it up. It's very practical. It's very practical.
Very well put. You brought up a point right there, talking about just innovating in general. And towards the beginning of the book, there's a quote that kind of really opened my eyes and told me what this was all about. And I wrote it down. Innovating isn't just a way to thrive or survive, but a responsibility to provide the level of service your constituents expect and need. So she's saying, innovation isn't just a neat thing or a leg up on competition, as you put it. It's your responsibility, because she even goes so far as like, imagine the life-altering implications of a mediocre program failing to meet the needs of an at-risk person. Let me ask you this, Lori. Do you recall any of the particular stories that really kind of resonated with you throughout the book?
I do. She shared the story of Habitat for Humanity. And this is one of the great things about the book is she doesn't just give you the theory and the tactical, she gives you examples so you can see what it looks like in real life. And it's very relatable. So she told the story of Habitat for Humanity, and she told the story of 911 and the identification series and how that unfolded. So Habitat for Humanity was created by a small pocket of people living on a community farm in somewhere in the States. Sorry, that slips my mind right now. And they saw that there was a need related to people in that community that were unable to afford mortgages and unable to therefore get homes. And a lot of it was due to discrimination. Used donations as their model, and they used volunteers to build and create the actual homes. And then we know the end of the story. So that's a big theme in her book is size doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be a big nonprofit with lots of resources. You can do it regardless of size. And then the other example that she gave, she talks about the power of collaborating. And it's something that I see is unfolding with a number of nonprofits. I think a little bit more so since COVID hit. And the value of bringing those assets together, looking at individual strengths and collaborating, what one has, the other may not have. And the idea of, ideating, I think was the word that she used. Do you remember the TV drama Emergency?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I used to watch. So am I. We're aging ourselves, dating ourselves.
Right.
I loved it, watched it lots. But it actually was the precipitus of the 911 system, because while it highlighted the great work of first responders, what it also showed was some of the challenges within the system. And so there actually was a foundation that offered grant monies and said, innovate, but we want you to innovate as a bunch of collaboratives. And, for lack of a better word, imposed or forced some folks to come together.
Sure. No, I agree. The story that really resonated with me, several of them hit me. Many of them I kind of knew some stuff about, but towards the end of the book, she speaks a little more about her own experience in Kingston, Jamaica, with the Franciscan nuns at the school, and the challenges in the crime-ridden area around it. And if I've got one or two, and there are a couple of things I didn't absolutely love that I would have liked to have seen more, but mainly it's that particular chapter where it talks about being curious, contrarian, and diplomatic, kind of a three-stool approach that she witnessed in those nuns, and the way they got amazing things done, but did it in a diplomatic way. Because as entrepreneurs, we get the curious and the contrarian very, very well. Yeah, so the theme of curious, contrarian, and diplomatic, I'd like to see that. I think that can be fleshed out and kind of recursively working. I think a lot of the themes in this book kind of got short shrifted because they could expand out into a significant amount of information. I honestly think this book could have been 2 books. And I think that chapter towards the end in particular, whereas a lot of them are tropes on entrepreneurship and small business and startup and stuff like that, they're easily fit into the stories that are woven around them. I think some of these themes are big enough they could have been stretched out significantly. And I don't want to take anything away from the book, but that's, if I had one little kind of like, maybe I would have liked this a little more.
Well, and maybe this is our invite to Leah to do book number 2. And we haven't talked to her, so maybe she's got something at play.
Oh, yeah. I want to get this out there. Like, this is not a sponsored book review. Leah doesn't even know we're doing this. And I haven't spoken with her yet. And after this, maybe I never will. Who knows?
We'll see, because I would agree with you. I would agree with you on that topic. And I'm sure it's hard to decide what topics to put in a book and narrow that scope. And, as someone who can be very wordy and big picture thinking, like, I appreciate the challenges that, one would have in deciding what goes into a book. And so my one thing on that topic too, and I have a complete bias, so I say that, wholeheartedly up front, because a lot of the work that I do is helping nonprofits support or create strategy. So that was an area for me that I, think would have been of benefit, because it's so comprehensive and so supportive in helping nonprofits, grow, sustain, advance their mission, that I think a little more around strategy. Here's where we are, here's where we want to go, and here's how we're going to get there. Like, that's the essence of strategy. And strategy is as much about, she talks about components of strategy all the way through, like competitive edge, competitive advantage is part of developing your strategy. Vision is part of developing your strategy. And she does talk about the importance of nonprofits saying no and setting boundaries, because nonprofits are famous for, wanting to do more for more. And so they say yes a lot of the times. And strategy is as much about what you will do as it is about what you won't do. So she has woven a lot of the strategy components throughout. But again, bias, would just love to have seen a little bit more focused in one section and some more depth around that.
I think this book is a tremendous entree into a whole lot of innovation techniques and the theory behind it. And another thing that I was very impressed with was just the citations, the quotes, the citation. It's extremely rare that I read a book and I'm actually flipping back to the citations to look up other sources to actually read what they're talking about. But she did a phenomenal job. The research here is incredible. You don't see usually a citation list quite as long as for this book. It's clear that she put a whole lot into creating this awesome resource.
Yeah, I think it's a must read for any nonprofit leaders. And as a consultant, I certainly found great value in it. And there's some takeaways that I'm going to use in the work that I'm doing supporting nonprofits as well. So it's a resource for consultants.
I'm really happy that you were able to do this with me, just because, you know me, I'm a squirrel. I'll be all over the place just rambling for 45 minutes.
So. We've done well. And just to clarify, like I had a conversation, Leah, I don't really know her. I had a conversation. It's a really cool program called The Hive.
Yeah.
And yeah, are you part of it as well?
Yes, I am in the nonprofit Hive. I've already had a couple of conversations. That is another amazing program that if you're not, and you put me onto the Hive, as a matter of fact. You and I were chatting on LinkedIn, and you're the one who told me about the Hive.
Oh, love it.
So I got connected, and Tasha, I think, hooked me up with a brilliant gentleman in Great Britain that I spoke to, that we're still speaking because we're both in the technology side of working with nonprofits. He's part of a software platform. But yeah, so why don't you just, while we're into it and we mentioned it, why don't you tell people what the Hive is about?
It's an organization. I don't know, maybe I'm not even sure if that's the right word, but it connects nonprofits, leaders, and consultants together. And you set up what's called your weekly Hive chat. And it's an opportunity to simply have a conversation about whatever strikes your fancy, because we recognize as entrepreneurs, as leaders and executives in the nonprofit field, it can be very isolating. And it's really nice to have someone to just empathize with, understand, some of the pain points, share ideas, problem solve with. So it's intent to build relationships. And so from my own experience, the last few ones have been conversations with two different gentlemen. One is in Nigeria, one is in Uganda. Wow. And so just talk about a fabulous cultural experience as well, and the opportunity to see what it's like in the nonprofit sector in different countries. So it's a great resource, no fee. You sign up, and it's such an easy system for connecting you on a weekly basis. Thursdays, You pick your time, you opt in, you opt out.
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations through the Hive, and it was very, very valuable. And anybody who knows me knows I love to network, and pretty much everybody in my town is tired of me. So it was nice to expand my reach to a whole nother audience of people that have to listen to me for half an hour.
Well, now you've invaded Canada.
Well, true. I didn't have Canada on my list. I can put that pin on the map. Lori, now that we've pretty much wrapped up the book review, I think it's pretty clear that we're both very positive on the book. How can people connect with you?
Well, thanks for that. So I'm hanging out on LinkedIn a lot. Lori Stanley, Lori, Stanley, Stanley. And then my website is Nonprofit Consulting. Those are the two main places where I can be found and hanging out and sharing thoughts and ideas, and certainly available to do work internationally. It's a bit of an agenda, a goal that I have. So I'm not tethered to work here in Canada.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to not only read the book, but also come on here with me and just talk through it and all that. And here's looking forward to doing it again.
I would love to. This has been super fun.
Oh, thank you, Lori.